When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile, but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Life is strange with its twists and turns, as every one of us sometimes learns, and many a failure comes about when he might have won had he stuck it out. Don't give up though the pace seems slow. You may succeed with another blow. Success is failure turned inside out, the silver tint of the clouds of doubt. And you never can tell how close you are. It may be near when it seems so far. So stick to the fight when you're hardest hit. It's when things seem worse that you must not quit. My guest, Rick Knight, who rose to the top of the radio world in Middle Georgia in the late 80s and 90s, hosting the popular Rick Knight Road Show, can relate to that famous poem I just read. You're about to hear the raw, unfiltered story of a once famous Middle Georgia radio voice and the imperfect man behind the voice when he suddenly lost his job and his identity with it. He chased the quick wins, ignored the warning signs, and hurt the people who mattered most. The consequences, they came hard and they came fast. But this isn't just a story about failing and wrong decisions. It's a story about owning up, about facing the damage, taking responsibility, and choosing a different path, even when the road to redemption is steep and full of scars. It is a story about true friendship when most pretenders turn their backs, and is a story about love and loss, of accountability, of change, of hope. Rick Knight reminds us that it's never too late to rewrite the ending. This is the Rick Knight story.
Viewing life from a hearse, it could be worse. Laugh, think, and cry with the country undertaker.
This is Bruce Goddard, and you're listening to the View from a Hearse podcast. Man, I am honored to have Rick Knight. Yeah, y'all have heard of him. I guarantee you, if you're 45 years old and older and live in Middle Georgia, you remember Rick Knight from WDEN radio. Man, I used to listen to him all the time. He and Laura Starling. He was this popular DJ, and he was different because, Rick, you would talk about what was going on in your life, and you would be honest about things. If you were suffering from depression or whatever, you drew audiences in that normally are not drawn. You talk about Alabama football, although I'm a Georgia dog. You talk about the Crimson Tide. You talk about NASCAR. That ended up some of that probably hurt you in your career, but it drew the audience in, and you had a large following. So, but then all of a sudden, I pick up the paper one day and I see that you had been arrested. You were a well-known personality in Macon. So just talk about that day. You were at the top of the world in the radio business, and what happened that day and how it all came down, and a little bit of where you found yourself that day.
Well, let me first of all say that it's an honor being on your podcast. This is the first one I've ever done, by the way.
That's amazing to me. Yeah, that's amazing.
It's a real honor, and it's an honor just being alive in the world today, or being alive, period. Let me tell you that the arrest thing happened. Of course, I had a 16-year career at WDEN, and the last 14 was on afternoons where we did the Rick Knight Road Show, which was successful. I did it to be successful. I didn't do it to fail. It was a lot of fun, and I made a lot of sacrifices for that show, and some I should not have made. And people ask me all the time, and I hate questions like this. People say, if you had to do it all over again, would you have gotten into radio broadcasting? And the answer is no. That's just the way it is. But actually, it's true. I would not have done it. I don't look at it as a mistake because it happened and it led me to where I am today. So, but I wouldn't have chose that again. But anyway, I got let go. The station sold to, two companies for a long time owned all the radio stations. There was Clear Channel, now known as iHeartRadio, and then Cumulus Media out of Atlanta. iHeart bought the Clear Channel. iHeart bought the bigger market stations, and Cumulus bought the smaller to medium market stations. So anyway, I got let go. Corporate, whatever reason. I'm not here to bash them. I don't like them. I'm not here to bash them. So anyway, they let me go. That was 2002, November of 2002. They let me go. And probably this, well, I don't say probably, this is where the mistake, where I made the worst mistake. But I don't look at it now like mistakes, because if I hadn't made the mistakes, then I wouldn't have gotten to the point I'm at now.
Isn't that the truth? So, isn't that the truth for anybody? That you can look at mistakes as I blew it, or it's a stepping stone to be somebody else, right?
It's hindsight's 20/20, and everything happens for a reason. And every choice I've ever made in my life has led me to this point of talking to you today.
Right.
So.
But this is a story you really hadn't told before, right?
Yeah, I knew when Rick Humphrey, if Rick Humphrey passed away before me, I knew that I would tell this. I mean, the one thing about the second deal that came along, I never told anyone except my mom, and then the lady that bailed me out, and that was about it, because it was just so, I didn't need that on top of the other. Right. But anyway, Cumulus lets me go. So I hit a downward spiral. I could have drawn unemployment, which I didn't do because I was so foolishly, that Rick Knight Road show on WDEN was, that was who I was. That was my life. That was my everything.
Yep.
And that's foolish, because I turned out not to be a good father, which I'm trying to work on now. And I'm working on that. And, probably wasn't a good husband. That was my whole life. Foolishly, that was my whole life. It was who I was. So when I lost it, it all came unwound. I made one poor choice after another. I could have regrouped. You talk about somebody that made the poorest choices available. Man, I was on a roll. And I got into some things I shouldn't have got into. I was a recreational drug user, but that's such a cop-out, because just take the word recreational out of it, and that's what someone is. Right. Society has a way of doing that, making, people, he's a recreational user. No, he's a user. I ended up that day, I was renting that house, and it wasn't my deal, but then yet I was held responsible because I was renting the house. Feds picked up the case, and, one thing led to another. I was down and out. Lester Miller's my attorney now, it's the mayor of Macon, but what I pled guilty to was actually what I was guilty of. And it's called misprision of a felony, which is witnessing the commission of a felony offense and failing to report it to proper authority. So it's kind of like the Good Samaritan law on Seinfeld. But, I knew what was going on. It was sensationalized a little bit by the media.
It was sensationalized because you were well known. That makes it worse, right? You had a friend that trusted you when seemingly nobody else did. You mentioned him a while ago, Rick Humphrey. Even after you had gone through this and been arrested, I guess before you were sentenced, he hired you, even with all the negative publicity. Talk about the importance of his friendship. I know that, as you mentioned, his recent death is the reason you're telling this story. I know there's a lesson in that for people, because he befriended you when he didn't have to. And you'll never forget that. And we have an obligation to befriend others that's going down a rough road, because we all go down a rough road. So just talk about Rick and how he impacted you.
I'll tell you, you just talking about it makes me get emotional, because Rick Humphrey saved my career. But most importantly, Rick Humphrey saved my life, because he believed in me when no one else did. Rick Humphrey ran Taylor Broadcasting in Macon for years, and ran our competition across town, our main competition. And I never met the guy. I think everyone on our staff did. I had heard the name a gazillion times. And when all this happened, I never met the guy. And I'd be gone from WDEN after being let go for 3 years, and when this happened. And so one day, just out of the blue, I went to stay at my mom's in McRae, actually headed toward Jacksonville, Georgia, about 6 miles from there. And Mom went into town one day. There's no internet at my mom's. I went out there to and I was at a low point now. So I went in town, had Mom drop me off at the public library, and got on the computer, and I was just looking around because I was still trying to get a job, in radio, and I looked up stations in Valdosta because my best friend from high school was down there, and he got involved with the Valdosta football program. Well, anyway, I looked and I saw Rivers Broadcasting down there and saw General Manager Rick Humphrey. I said, well, that's a guy from Macon. So I just shot an email, not expecting anything back that day, and said, I don't know if you remember me, but blah, blah, blah. And, I was looking for a job. So next day, I take Mom's vehicle and I go into town and go to the library, and he answered. He said, come down to Valdosta and talk to me. Next day, I'm on my way to Valdosta to talk to him. And we met and we talked for hours, just talking about the day and stuff. And he talked about, we always tried to beat you and couldn't. We brought consultants in and just that and the other. And I said, what a great guy. I told him about what happened. And I remember he said, Mr. Knight, we don't get the Macon Telegraph down here. Could you start next week? Well, he put me to work in sales because I'd worked tons in sales. I went to Clear Channel, worked in sales, and was actually good at it when I thought I wasn't. So he hired me at Valdosta for sales. Well, anyway, 6 weeks into that, I commuted back and forth with my mom's to go to Valdosta, and loved the guy, just loved him. And 6 weeks after that, I go in one day and he's gone. Well, come to find out, he went to Dublin, and I called him. He said, Mr. Knight, I was about to call you. I want you to come up here with me, and I'm going to put you on the air. I said, with all that stuff going on up there, I was going to be back in this market, because of the station back 104.9, backdoored into Macon. And I said, wow. Okay. So anyway, Rick Humphrey basically reached out and gave me a helping hand when no one else would. He believed in me when I really didn't even believe in myself. And I probably, if it wasn't for Rick Humphrey, and I'm just going to be blunt here about this, I probably would have hung myself or something when Rick Humphrey. This man saved me. You talk about an angel on earth, and really, nobody really ever knew him as that way. He was a great guy to work for. He was very low key. He was very composed. He was a real private person. That's why I never would have mentioned all this with him alive, because he would have, he was so private and such a great manager.
The thing that hits me about it is that there are people that need our friendship, and his friendship is probably why you're alive today and telling this story. And we could be that important to other people. I learned that from my dad. When people are going through a rough time, especially in smaller towns when everybody knows everything, and in your case, everybody knew you because you were a public figure, most people turn their back and say, I don't want to talk to him, I don't want to be seen. But I used to watch my daddy go to those people and befriend them. And I know this man did that to you. It just struck a chord that there's a huge lesson in that. So this was happening. He hired you, and you ended up in Dublin between when you pleaded guilty and before you were sentenced. And this is a federal charge, right? Am I correct on that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, he knew of that. And when he hired me, I hadn't been indicted yet to go to Dublin. Well, when I got indicted, he said, well, my hands are tied now. There's nothing I can do. And for about 2 days, I really was down and out, staying in bed all day. Here I'd been a chance to go back on the air, and then I got indicted, and that took it away from me. Right. And I was really down and out. And I remember it being about 2 or 3 days, and it was a Sunday afternoon. Phone rang, and Mom said, "Well, you got in here?" So she said, "Honey, Rick Humphrey's on the phone." I remember picking up the phone and going, "Mr. Knight, I've been thinking about this, and I believe in you anyway. I want you to start Monday, go on the air." Oh, you talk about, that was it right there. That was the call.
Wow. So here you were given a chance by this guy, and you had to say, wow, there's still good people in the world. He believes in me when nobody else did. In spite of what was in the news, he was bringing you on the radio. And then all of a sudden, while you were doing that, all of a sudden you got arrested for something that you didn't do. To just tell a little bit of that story. That's the most mind-boggling story I ever heard in my life. Talk about what happened.
This story still to this day bothers me and has made me look at things different. And number one, let me say this. I strongly support law enforcement. Okay. I believe in what they do. I think we all should be indebted to them because they keep us safe. And I totally support law enforcement, always have, always will. But just like there's good people, there's good DJs, bad DJs, there's good, I don't want to say good lawyers and bad lawyers, but, there's good people and bad people in all walks of life.
Right.
And I'm not going to say the people that did this are bad, but it just goes to show you, it's the first week I'm on the air with Humphrey. I had this federal stuff. Hey, I went and got indicted, went and pled not guilty, got a bond, and was out on what the feds call pretrial probation. That's key. Pretrial probation means they monitor you. If you get in any trouble or just, sneeze the wrong way, they're going to put you in jail until you come up for trial.
Right.
So it's my first week on the air with Humphrey. The Friday, the first week, I'm pretty sure it was the first week, could have been the second, but I think it was the first week. And anyway, I'm on the air I haven't been on the air about 20 minutes. Receptionist come back and say, Rick, there's a couple of deputies here to see you. Went, oh, dear Lord, what's this about? So I come back there and they said, they didn't wait. They just came on back behind her. And they said, Rick, could you come out here and talk to us for a minute? That's why I'm trying to do my show here. And they said, you got somebody else can do it? I said, no. I can put it on automation, though. I can put it on automatic, let the software run itself. And by the time Humphrey came down, and they said, Humphrey said, what's going on here? I said, I really don't know. And they said, well, you need to we need to take him to Macon. He needs to come to Macon with us. We need to talk to you. I said, Humphrey goes, about what? I said, yeah. And they said, we'll tell you when we get there. I said, no, I want to know right now. We'll tell you when we get there. So I told Humphrey, I said, I'll call you as soon as I know, because I have no idea. I have no idea. I mean, it scared me death. Here they're handcuffing me and putting me in the back of a detective's car. These were two detectives, two investigators. Anyway, so here I'm riding to Macon. I'm sitting in the back of basically a police cruiser and unmarked. And so I've got my hands are cuffed. I'm a danger. And they're behind my back. It's uncomfortable, and they had them on too tight. I ended up losing 20% of wrist, 15% of wrist function out of that. But anyway, it happened. It was supposed to happen. One thing that shook me up in my life, probably about the worst, was this. So all the way to Macon, 51 miles all the way to Macon, I'm asking them, what is this about? We'll talk to you when we get to Macon. I said, no, talk to me now. I said, you came and took me off the air. And I said, I've got this federal thing hanging over me. If I'm in some kind of trouble if I'm handcuffed, obviously I'm in some kind of trouble. So we get to Macon and we go in their office, and they take my cuffs off, and they pop in a CD and show this grainy black and white footage and it's an empty hallway. And all of a sudden I see this guy come around the hallway, walks down the hallway under the camera. He had on the Atlanta Braves cap. Well, it's black and white now. And I wear Alabama hat. And there's script A's, but there's a difference.
Right.
There's a difference in them.
Yep.
Like I didn't know that. This was an Atlanta Braves cap, and I wore one before. He had a scarf over his face. And he had on some kind of glasses, which could have been sunglasses. I really didn't know. But the guy walked like me and kind of looked like me. Was he walking down the hall? I went, oh, no, what's this about? It scared me because it did look like me. The guy walked like me and was similar, but once he got closer to the camera, it was obvious this guy was not me. And I was pointing out and showing them. I said, look right here. And I had gray in my mustache and beard by then. I hadn't colored it. And this guy was young. I said, this is not me. Well, we have a good friend of yours said it sure looked like you. So here they come. That's all they needed. They said, well, a good friend of yours said that looks just like you. And I said, look, there's some mannerism. It's a black and white film. That's not me. Now, can I call somebody and get a ride back to Dublin or what? This is ridiculous. And I see the guy filling out a piece of paper. I went, what are you doing? And I looked over his shoulder and it says, inmate entrance form. I said, you put me in jail for this? He said, well, yeah. And I said, do you know what this does to me? I said, number one, I didn't do this. I said, there goes my federal pretrial probation right out the window. I'm going to sit in jail until my federal thing comes up, and you just blew everything that I've worked to rebuild. I said, over this. Well, luckily, I thought I was having a heart attack. Well, they take me to the infirmary and start putting the EKG on me. I suppose you had to shave the body hair to put one on you and all. So I remember the lady just started that. I'd made a phone call to my friend that owned that house where all the federal stuff took place, explosive stuff and whatever. I called her and told her, well, they're doing this EKG on me. And they come back and they said, Mr. Knight, Rick, I said, yeah. They said, you made bond. Man, when they said that, I was pulling those cups off. They said, well, he's getting so-and-so. I said, I was. And I was pulling those suction cups off and pulling wires and all this. I go running up to the front and got out of there as quick as I could, because I knew that the feds were probably on the way up there and was going to revoke my pretrial probation. So, yeah, so anyway, 8 weeks go by. I get out on bond, don't hear anything from the feds. I called and told them. And the federal probation officer said, I was on the way up there, and I got there, and you wasn't there. I said, oh, man. He said, but I wouldn't have pulled your probation probably because you just charged with it. I said, yeah, but look at it. And look, this is the first time I'd ever been in trouble of any kind. The federal thing was, ever.
Right.
My probation officer said, well, it's the first time you ever got caught. And, I guess there was a point in that. But what happened was this guy stole, I think, $17 out of the vending machines, broke in Central Fellowship Christian School, and stole, which is, about 2 miles from the house I was living in up there, where all that happened. But I'd already moved to McRae, stayed with my mom. So this guy broke into school, stole $17 out of the vending machine. So what they're accusing me of is driving 90 miles. I said, you're accusing me of driving 90 miles from my mom's. I guess they thought I was still living on Allen Road there. From my mom's to steal $17 out of a vending machine at a Christian school. And this is what scared me the worst. Well, no, the federal getting that revoked scared me the worst. I said, wait till the media gets a hold of this. I said, this will be the end. I'd done everything I could. And Rick Humphrey gave me that opportunity. And it was going to make him look bad. It was going to really just put me under. That would have been it. Local DJ charged with so-and-so federal. Now it broke into a Christian school.
But then they came back and said, you didn't do it.
For 8 weeks, I had all that hanging on me. So when I had to go to the doctor, that's why I got put on beta blockers, which I'm still on today. For 8 weeks, I called the bond. The bond was like $1,500 total, which ended up being like, $150, right? I think $120 she paid, which we lost that money. So 8 weeks go by. Still got all the federal thing, peeing in cups, and got the federal guy coming by. And, they're scary enough. The federal pretrial probation officer coming by. And then I have to call a bondsman every Friday about this stupid charge. And
you're still on the radio, right?
Yeah, still on the radio now. Still on the radio. Still on the radio. And and I was kicking pretty good on the radio. I don't know how now, but anyway,
Me either.
It was. So anyway, after 8 weeks of calling, I called one Friday to the bondsman, and I gave my name, and they said, "Well, what's your name again?" I told them. I said, "Now what's your name again?" I told them, so look, I call you every Friday, man. Don't you remember? I call you every Friday. He said, well, I'll write you down anyway for calling. I think that's weird. See, I didn't know the way all that worked. I had no idea. That following Monday, I'd been on the air about 20 minutes. A receptionist called, which I don't know. And she goes, Rick, you got a call on the business line too. So I picked it up. I said, yes, hello. And he said, Rick, this investigator, blah, blah, blah. And we'll let you know we're dropping the burglary charges on you. We caught the guy. He came back. We caught him red-handed. And I said, look, I told you that wasn't me. And this one line this guy said that I will never forget. I said, you knew that wasn't me. You came all the way to Dublin and got me. I said, I told you it wasn't me. You put me in jail, and that could have cost me everything. He said, well, Rick, yeah, we figured it wasn't you. I said, what'd you arrest me for then? He goes, I'll never forget this, and as God is my witness, the man said this. Well, Rick, we had to arrest somebody.
Unbelievable. So you've been through all this stuff. You lost your job. You started making bad decisions. You get arrested. It's all in the papers. You got a man that's extended grace to you and hired you despite of whatever people were thinking. Then you get falsely arrested, lose 15% or 20% or whatever your hand function, being handcuffed, riding for an hour and a half to Macon or whatever it was. Things ain't going too good. And then finally, you go before Judge Owens. And if you had to pick a judge to sit before to get sentenced, that's probably not the guy you would pick to be the sentencer. Am I right? And so,
he's the last one I picked. He was retired.
Yeah.
But he came out of retirement because they were short-staffed. And lucky me, when I found out I got him, He sent my stepdad to prison on a misdemeanor 2 decades before that, and he was known as the hanging judge. So I'll tell you this: the pretrial probation with the feds, I mean, that's like doing a sentence, and the not knowing, with the help of Rick Humphrey, I give him all the credit. I just tried to rebuild my life, and I thought I'd get some credit for that or something, but I did that because I knew I had a second chance, and I wanted one so bad. And Rick Humphrey comes along with just waiting was excruciating.
I mean, I
did a show during that.
Folks, we're listening to Rick Knight, very popular radio host in Macon, Georgia, WDEN, back in the late 80s and the 90s. Everybody knows Rick Knight that ever turned on the radio in Macon. We're going to be right back. You were sentenced by Judge Owens, and obviously, like you said, that was the worst possible scenario. It looks like everywhere you turn and things not going your way, period, in life. And some of that you brought on yourself, some of it's consequences, but you also had some things happen that were just outlandish. But anyway, you were sentenced to 18 months, and I know at that point you were going to go away to a federal prison. You had to feel like your life was over at that point. Just talk a little bit about what you were feeling that day when that sentence came.
Well, let me back up just a little bit about, Humphrey was so supportive of me, waiting on during pretrial and obviously giving me a job. He even put me on TV commercials on Cox Cable that ran in Macon. Here I am, hey, it's Rick Knight for 1049 WMCG, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And so, he just put me right back out there. And really, it made it kind of look like Rick didn't do nothing. Look, there he is on the radio and TV. Before I went in for sentencing, Humphrey started acting kind of, hey, it's going to be all right. It's going to be okay. He's just going to be all right. I said, he's acting pretty nonchalant about the sentencing all of a sudden. Well, I knew Judge Owens was the hanging judge. And when I got the guidelines, federal sentences on guidelines, 12 to 18 months, very seldom does a judge, which like never, varies from those guidelines, 12 to 18 months. And there's no parole in the federal system. So when I found out the guidelines, I said, Humphrey, 12 to 18 months, I said, I'm probably going away for at least 12 months. He said, it's all going to work out. He seemed real confident. Well, I'll tell you what, after I got sentenced. So yeah, I had 4 people speak for me that day. Denise Creel with Easter Seals, Middle Georgia, who I'd done some volunteer work for, and just a wonderful cause. My pastor, who I've known forever, Paul Lavender, we used to be pastor at Victory Baptist Church. He spoke for me. Of course, Rick Humphrey went up there and spoke, and then a local politician, longtime politician, Jim Aaron. He had been coming on my show, and I figured putting him on, that would help. He is a politician. He comes and testifies on my behalf. So anyway, all that, I went into Lawrence County Community Mental Health Center when all this happened after I went to work for Humphrey, admitted myself into a nighttime rehab program. We had to go take a drug test 3 times a week, and I get off the air 5 till 7, go down there, be there at 7, stay to 9. I had 70-something positive drug tests. I mean, not positive in a good way.
Right. Negative, yeah. Right, I got you.
Judge Owens had all that up there. I don't even think I ever opened the envelope. He listened to all those people. So anyway, he looks right at me and he said, Mr. Knight, before I sentence you, do you have anything to say for yourself? Looking back now, I think it was all determined before I went to court. I told him, I pleaded with him. I said, Judge Owens, since WDEN let me go, my life has went in a downward spiral. And I said, when something happens like that, it just seems like momentum starts piling on. And I made some really poor choices. I'm sorry. I apologize for those choices. I said, but I have a man that spoke, Rick Humphrey, who's given me a second chance. And there is no way on God's green earth will I blow that. I know what he's done for me. No one else would have done. And I said, for a whole year, I have rebuilt my life every way possible. And Rick Humphrey said he's He's a great employee. The staff loves him. He's been making a positive impact in the community. If you take him away, I'm going to have to replace him. It's going to hurt our station. It's going to hurt our audience. It's going to hurt the community. And it's going to hurt Rick Knight worse than it hurts anyone. And that's what Rick Humphrey and I teared up at this right in front of the judge. Owen says, Your Honor, he's not only my best employee, he's also my friend. Well, anyway, I pleaded with Judge Owens, just give me anything. Put me in jail on the weekends for however long that the court sees fit. Give me lifetime probation. Fine me, whatever. Please do not send me away. And I wasn't scared to go away. It was the fact that I knew that this second opportunity, that'd be the end of it, and there wouldn't be a third. There would not be a third. So he looked right at me, and I said, that's all I ask, Your Honor. I will take the punishment, and I will accept the fact that I did what I pled guilty for. I'm guilty. And I said, I already pled guilty. He said, Mr. Knight, I've sent you to 18 months into the custody of the Bureau of Prisons, $3,000 fine, and 1 year supervised release, which is probation. So my heart went to my feet. Well, I turned around and looked at Rick Humphrey immediately, and his face is blood red. And he's looking at Jim Aaron, the politician, and he throws his hands up in the air like, what the heck? What the heck? So Humphrey covered for me. I did get self-surrender. They could have took me right then, but Judge Owens did give me self-surrender. Yeah, I can do that. So as the marshals came up behind me, ready to grab me when he said no and whisked me away. But
you got sentenced. You went off to federal prison, and talk about, and you said something that got my attention, because this was your last chance, and you got a second chance. There'd never be a third chance. When you got out of federal prison, tell me a little bit about what you were thinking, and all of a sudden, I'm out. I guess you had a year supervised, whatever it was, but heck, that's been a long time ago now. How many years ago was it when you got out of federal prison?
17 years ago when I got out.
It's like way back in your past, and it's easier to look back and talk about what you learned, but talk about what you were thinking coming back into the real world, or how you'd be accepted, or if you'd ever have another chance to do anything. Talk about what frame of mind you were in.
The second chance never turned into a third because the second chance remained. Rick Humphrey came up with this idea. You know what? I'm going to keep you on the air. What do you mean? We don't know. They told me it'd be probably about 6 to 8 weeks before I had to go self-surrender. So every day I'd go to the mailbox and look for that paper. Still stayed on the air. I stayed on the air. It was hard. In your spare time, I want you to go in the production room and record generic mic breaks. Not dated, not anything that would have a timestamp to them. Yeah, we're going to call it Rick Knight Disconnected. And I'm going to leave you on the air. I went, man, that's unreal. I said, it's just unreal.
Yeah.
And I looked up to God, the divine. I believe in the divine creator. And I said, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for this man. And so, yeah, I went away. It was federal prison camp. It could have been worse.
Right.
I was on Macon Air Force Base in Montgomery.
Right.
Every month I would write a letter. And I stayed in touch with Humphrey. He emailed me. We had closed circuit email where they had to get approved. It was delayed an hour each way back and forth so they could read it. But he emailed me every day, all 361 days I was in prison. He emailed me every single day. Update me on the station, what's going on, the weather. Football season came, talked a lot about football. That itself right there is unreal. And I would call him on the phone. We got so many phone minutes, and I'd call him on the phone. And he'd always, just hearing his voice was wonderful. And I remember calling Denise with Easter seals in the afternoon. And I don't think I mentioned this in the book I'm writing. And she would go, hold on a minute. And she would take the phone and hold it down to the speaker. So I'm standing in federal prison camp, Montgomery, Maxwell Air Force Base, listening to myself do a show in the free world. She put it down there. She go, hold on. And she put the phone down there, and I would hear the breaks. Well, I knew the lieutenants were here because they would randomly monitor calls. But anyway, I wrote a letter every month. I had to go take it and get it approved by the lieutenant in the lieutenant's office to go out and say, want me to release anything I shouldn't. So they'd monitor it and approve it, and I'd send it to Humphrey. He'd put it up on the website. So it had my mailing address. I got so much mail in there, and that really helped me so much. But I get out and had to go to the halfway house. Well, they wouldn't let me come back to Dublin because it's out of the sentencing district. So thank the good Lord for Wayne Morris Ford. He gave me a job temporarily in sales. And it's about the time the disaster of 2008, 2009 hit with, you remember, $5 a gallon gas and all.
Right.
So I did decent in sales there. For, made a little money. Halfway house got there, third or nurse assistants, whatever it was. And I just waited still to another 3.5, 4 months to go to Dublin and do the show live, which finally came. So see, it never was interrupted. And I'll say this, here's that Rick Knight disconnected thing. That was one of the huge things. So many things Rick Humphrey, this man did. I can never thank him enough.
And I can see why you're his death recently has impacted you. Yeah, it's so impacted you.
My world, and it just made the world stop, because this man to me, Rick Humphrey, he was larger than life to me. And what that means, you can't imagine someone like that dying.
Right.
You hold him in such high regards that you just can't imagine him dying.
Yeah. Then all of a sudden, when you get out at some point, you found your true love. And all of a sudden, she became ill, and she passed away. And so although you'd been through all that, you're back, and now you have to deal with that. Just talk a little bit about that.
Humphrey and I both ended up being a casualty of bad economic times in 2009. He goes to work at Comcast in Myrtle Beach in sales. I'd gotten married while I was still working at 104.9 to a girl in Macon that I knew a long time ago, Debbie, and we got married, and then she lost her job, and I lost my job, and we went to Charlotte. She was mortgage underwriter. She got a great job at Wells Fargo. So we moved to Charlotte. I got a job that Rick Humphrey gave me a recommendation for at a small station in the Charlotte market that actually, the AM station did very well. It was, and they loved me there. They thought I was, oh, you're a professional radio person. I wouldn't go to all that. But anyway, so we ended up getting a divorce there. That was my fourth divorce. And I'm not going to slide in my ex-wives. They're all good people.
Right.
It just wasn't meant to be. We just want a match.
Right.
And that's just the way that is. There's no need to bash anybody or say anything. But I thought there was a girl that worked at WDEN that I thought was just the love of my life, and never worked out with her. She'd show up and disappear, and show up and disappear, show up and disappear. I just thought she was it. I put myself in a place where the feeling with her was so real, and she was so gorgeous and everything. And we just connected on a level that was unreal. Like time would stand still. We'd sit there and stare at the wall for 5 minutes and look up, and it'd been 10 hours. It's a twin flame type connection. Finally, she disappears. She went with Humphrey to take me to Montgomery, and then came and visited me one time about 2 weeks into my stay, and did quit answering my calls. That's it. She disappeared for the final time. I thought that I would never, ever find anyone any better than that, top that. And just as far as the overall connection, I said, well, that was anybody else going to be a step down from her. That was a tough feeling. So we got divorced. Debbie and me got divorced. I came back to Macon on a bus. Went to work at WPGA, Channel 58, working in sales, commission only. They had a morning show at the time, Kenny B. and Charles in the morning, sponsored by the Macon Telegraph. It was a Republican Democrat news talk kind of show. So they turned in their notice about 2 months after I'd been there. Well, I'd already done so well. I didn't think so, but I didn't know a lot about sales, but I could make some sales. So I made enough sales that they put me on a salary. Not a great one, but it's better than working commission only. I can tell you that. So I was able to get my own apartment at the Massey, about a mile up the road. Well, anyway, Kenny B. and Charles left, and they came to me, engineer Hal Sutton, and I loved to death. He said, I'm going to go to bat for you. I'm going to put you on here. I said, you put me on TV? And he said, yeah, well, I didn't think I had a prayer. So anyway, next thing I know, they put me on the air to replace Kenny B. and Charles. We had holdovers, Sergeant Steve, who did the weather and stuff like that. He ran the control board. He was producer. We had Tom Meade, who did sports, Coach Tom, what they called him, and then me. So he told me to go find another co-host, which Brad Majors took the job. Then we need a news person, Gail Daniels, who probably has the best voice and best delivery of any female I've ever heard. I went to DEN with her. She said, y'all need a woman in that mix. I said, I need somebody to do news. The minute she sat down, Never knew news before. She was the best news anchor in Middle Georgia, hands down. We didn't even close. So anyway, we built that show up. Well, we're building it up. About a month went by. One day, I'm walking around the building, and guess who's sitting in the chair outside the general manager's office? Rick Humphrey. What are you doing here, man? I mean, I'm so happy to see him. He goes, I'm going to talk to Mr. Buffoon about, that's what I call the guy, Buffoon. Mr. Buffoon about something. Next thing I know, Rick Humphrey's coming to WPGA as our sales manager. So, I was so happy. And I think as I look back on it now, so he said he didn't like working Comcast in Myrtle Beach. Who wouldn't like living on the beach? I mean, I don't work in corporate, be a strain, but who wouldn't like living on the beach? And so I think Rick Humphrey came there because of me, because I was there.
I'm sure.
I really think that.
I'm sure.
He's the top, would never, ever admit that, but I think he did. So anyway, in the meantime, I'm on TV, and this really was my return to almost the plateau. I had WDEN. 104.9 was maybe a third of the way back as far as the attention and the notoriety and all that, but it was still far enough away that it kept me, away from the Macon stuff. Had a lot in Houston County, stuff like that. So when I was getting on Mix in the Morning TV, and we simulcast on 100.9 and then the AM station there as well, I didn't know a thing about politics at the time. Nothing. So I just called it like I saw it. I never watched the news or anything. Well, I finally got where I would get up in the morning. I had to get up like at 5 o'clock. That was horrible. So for 3 years, I get up at 5 o'clock. About a year into that, I started turning on. Before that, I just listened to some tunes while I was getting ready. And I put it on the Channel 13 early morning, whatever they call it. It's on the Lord, and I would watch the local news. Well, I've always been blessed. It can be a curse, though, don't get me wrong, with a excellent memory. I mean, but that can be a blessing or a curse. Right. So hold on to the good, hold on to the bad. Right. And you never forget. So, and then I would get on the air, and Gail would bring up stuff. She'd come down and talk with us after doing the news sometimes, and I would already know what was going on. Because Gail one day said, man, what's up with you? You're a news dynamo. I said, no, I don't do anything different. I was just watching the news before I went in, which sounded like I knew. Sounded like the police were called up fire. I said, yeah, I think they had that under control, and I believe it was caused by stuff she didn't even know. And so, anyway, we took that show. Kenny B and Charles stayed number 4, number 5 in the morning on down the ratings. We took that independent station. They had ran ABC off, outdated equipment. We took that show to a solid number 2 behind WMAZ. And that's unheard of. Nobody will ever beat them, by the way. Right. I don't see it. They're not helping themselves now. In the meantime, a listener, Linda Quick, said, you ought to meet my daughter. I think you and her have a lot in common, and she's got a good heart. So we met. We just said, we want a match. We just want a match. It just one of them things, it wasn't the right time. So about a year go by, and I see her online one night. I start talking to her, and I said, let's try this again. So Angela would come on the weekends. I would go pick her up at her mom's, and Kathleen come up and stay the weekend up in Macon with me. And for about 6 weeks, I got to the point to where Sunday came, I just didn't want to take her back. Well, I just had a wreck. She was real worried about me. So her mom brought her up there like on a Thursday when I had the wreck. And Angela stayed the weekend. And then Sunday came around. I said, Angela, just don't go home. Just stay with me. She's okay. And I went about the relationship with Angela totally different than I did any of the others. And because I said, well, all the others failed. So maybe I should do it totally different. This one will work. Angela did not want any part of broadcasting. She wanted no part of that world whatsoever. She didn't like it. She said, I know you love it. Leave me out of it. She just didn't want that part. And that meant something to me, Bruce. Uh-huh. That meant something to me because all the others, even the one I thought was the love of my life, that's the main thing that's the only thing they were interested in. Right. And Angela taught me what love was. And we got moving to Eastman, where I was able to work here at Wolf Country, 97.5, where I'm still at, working evenings, 7 to midnight. That was moved to Eastman July 4th of 2014, so how long that's been, 11 years. No, coming up on 11 years. I never knew what real true love was until I'd been with Angela about a year. I never knew. I thought, And I was 50 years old, for goodness sake, over 50 years old. And Angela was 11 years younger than me. And I never knew what love was until her. Angela could calm me down because I'm so high strung. And Angela could calm me down. In the apartment I live in now, I've been in for about 8 years. Angela and me, Maze and Eddie Booby cats. One weekend came, Angela just didn't feel right. Well, so I said, we'll call your mom. Let's get the ambulance over here. I'm gonna let her know what's going on. I called them. They stabilized her out here in the parking lot for about 45 minutes. That's just a hospital on wheels.
How long was it from when she first got sick till she passed away, Rick?
5 years.
So she lived 5 years from that moment. So you were basically taking care of her, right?
No, well, she came back to the apartment for about 2 weeks, and her mom has a very nice place, and all of Angela's doctors are up there. And face it,
right.
Who would you rather be with?
Right.
Some local yokel DJ. They do all this stuff, but
right.
You loved him and all, but would be with your mom.
Right.
Well,
sure.
That was a place for her to go.
Yeah.
She had a hospital bed up there. She was close to her doctors, and she had her mom.
Yeah.
And her mom, who had lost her husband, her mother, and her brother within a span of 3 years, all of a sudden got her oldest daughter in pretty bad shape. But Angela came back. She was on oxygen full time. She went from 140 pounds down to 90-something. There was two different Angelas in our relationship. There was the pre-sickness Angela. It was split 5 years before, 5 years after.
Right.
And I would go up there 2 and 3 times a week, and I would help all I could. Her mom saw that Angela never wanted or needed for anything.
Right.
I mean, her mom was, her mom's got a strong personality, and I do too. And we butted heads at first, and I was wrong. And I learned, I always liked her mom, and I finally became real close to her. And still to this day, they invite me up for Christmas and Thanksgiving and
right.
stuff like that. And it means a lot to me. But her mom looked after Angela until one day her lungs just gave out. She went cardiac arrest. She quit breathing. Mom calls the ambulance, take her to Houston Medical Center. So she passes away. And that was a year ago, last November 6th. And that was a loss. That was just a loss. I've lost 4 relationships to divorce. And I've lost a couple girlfriends. One that, the one I thought was the love of my life that I couldn't replace, but boy, did I.
The point is, you've been through a heck of a lot in your life, from getting to the top of the radio world to losing your job and spiraling out, making bad decisions, ended up falsely arrested for something. You had people in your life, and especially Rick Humphrey, who befriended you when you wouldn't have survived if he hadn't have. So after all that, you fall in love and you lose the love of your life. And it sounds like a terrible ordeal that you went through.
Well, it's nothing compared to what she went through. She went through so much, Bruce, and she never once complained. And she had such a positive, upbeat attitude about it. So I replaced the intimacy and the real romance with doing things, little things, to make her more comfortable, like getting her an icy at the store, getting her jokes in the book, and just going and sitting and watching TV with her and talking to her. That became the intimacy of our relationship the last few years.
So the point is, you've been through all of this, and it almost seems like at every turn you got knocked down. But now today you're telling the story. When it's all said and done, what do you want people to remember about Rick Knight?
When it's all said and done, more is said than done. I'm not the same guy I used to be. I look back on it now, Bruce, that I thought that I was, all of a sudden I'm in Macon. I build my way up. Get Travis Tritt, one of his first breaks. Jason Aldean, Jason Williams, was there for him at the start. And, they're on now megastars. And look at this way. When I thought that I was adulated or loved and had a lot of fans, what I never call fans, I call friends. I mean that, but it's not that. That's not what life's about, because it's like that one quote. It's not about what you're doing during the applause. It's It's what's left when the people are gone. And you worry about what people think about you and go to great extremes to keep up this image on. When truth is, they really probably weren't, but they weren't thinking about you at all. When people are selfish, people are good. I think for a majority of people in the world, I think they're good. I think 95% of people are good, good-natured and good people. Good people make bad decisions. I made bad choices. I can't change that. I wouldn't if I could, because that never would have bought Rick Humphrey. Angela would have never come along. I always had a big heart. I love animals. I love people. I've done some people wrong. And I didn't like steal or do anything like that. I'm just saying by not giving them the attention they deserve, that I should have, making wrong things important. When it's all said and done, we leave here, and you know this, Bruce. We all leave here with nothing. Same thing we came into the world with. Nothing.
That's true.
The graveyard is full of people that thought the world could run without them. With all this stuff, and we say all this stuff that happened to me, look, don't think I'm just a victim, because, I did wrong. I've done some rotten things, and I paid the price for it, and I did my debt. And what you can do is your character is not formed by what happens to you. Your character is formed by how you react to it. That's what your character is all about. If Rick Humphrey hadn't came along, I probably wouldn't even be alive today. That means Angela would never came along in my life. It means my cats, Baze and Eddie Boo Boo, who are still hanging in there. Maybe he's on his last leg, and sad to see, but I watched Angela go through all that she went through. When I would have folded faster than a pup tent in a hurricane, Bruce. And she never once complained. Not once. And I see all these people online complaining about, we didn't get the loan for our lake house and stuff like that, and they're all depressed. You don't have no problems. I saw somebody have problems. I didn't have any problems. Angela had problems. And she never once complained. Never once complained. Angela is my hero, Bruce. Because I could have never held up. And I held up through some stuff. A lot of it my own doing. Some of it was just bad circumstances, bad luck. Is there such thing as luck? Bad luck to be superstitious, but how it goes. So if I could be 10% the person Angela was, or my dad was, or Rick Humphrey was, then I would really be something, Well,
Rick, I'm going to tell you, I think you've got a book in you. I think you've got a stage to tell your story. I hope that we've whetted people's appetite to a life that has really been difficult, and you have been on the pinnacle in a couple of ways, on TV, the radio before that, and you've been through some tough stuff. And I think that if people are listening to this who are going through tough stuff, and they're at the point you were when you were in the courtroom and you thought your life was over. And I think the overlying message is it ain't over. You keep, whatever you go through, you keep plugging along.
A lot of people see that helping hand and just push it away. Let me say this too, Bruce. I don't think anybody knows this. Angela's been gone for a year and a half, and I hadn't even thought about seeing anyone else. And because, I'm pretty sure that Angela was the last person I'd ever be with. And Angela wouldn't want me sitting around moping, getting sad. It's been hard. I've cried almost every day over her. And somebody from my past, Katie, who's a radio girl, morning show host in Baxley, we've been talking and seeing each other 2 or 3 times, and I really do like her. So Angela's mom gave me a necklace, and I wear some of Angela's ashes around my neck, and I wear her wedding set, which we never got to use because when we got married, they would have cut off her Medicaid. We sure didn't need that. Wow. So I was closer to Angela than anybody ever married to. And
good for you. Good for you. I hope you find new love.
Katie is wonderful. She knows she can't replace Angela, as Angela could not replace her. People are different. And I really like her a lot.
You keep living your life. Angela wants you to keep living your life. And I can tell you that's the secret to overcoming, is you keep living your life. I love your quote. I'm going to read it. The longer you live, the more you realize success isn't measured by applause. It's measured by what's still standing when the crowd is gone. And boy, that's true, isn't it? And that's a quote from Rick Knight. Rick, thank you so much for being on here. I'm honored that you would tell your story here.
Thank you, Bruce. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you.
life from a hearse. It could be worse. Laugh, think, and cry with the country undertaker.